Years passed. The world changed, but not in the way people had feared. There were still problems. Storms, hunger, old wars that didn't end overnight. But there was also something new. Hope and knowledge. The Voidborn never left completely. They stayed in orbit watching quietly. Sometimes they sent small ships down to learn more. Sometimes they asked questions through glowing screens or symbols in the sky. They were no longer judges, they were students, and humans became teachers. Ethan Jones returned to Kansas. He didn't become a soldier or a politician. He went back to the university library where everything had started. The building was older now, and so was he. He sat between the same bookshelves just like before, only this time he wasn't hiding from aliens. He was writing about them. His book, The Words That Saved Us, became famous around the world. It told the story of how a simple note had opened a door between two very different kinds of beings. Children read it in school. Scientists used it to understand the Voidborn better. Even the Voidborn themselves studied it. Because now they weren't just watching, they were learning, together. In the years that followed, the relationship between humans and Voidborn grew slowly, carefully. Some people still feared the aliens. Some thought they were wasting time trying to talk when they could be preparing for war. But others saw what Ethan had seen. Curiosity, respect, understanding. Schools began teaching both human and Voidborn languages. Scientists shared ideas about stars and time. Farmers even worked with alien tools to grow food in places that had once been dry and broken. And children, they grew up knowing that the sky held more than just clouds. It held friends. Not like humans, but not enemies either. One day a new ship landed, not a Voidborn one, but a human one. It was built with help from both species. Its hull shimmered like the Voidborn ships, and its engines ran on ideas from both worlds. On board were 5 humans and 2 Voidborn. They stood side by side, not as masters and servants, not as conquerors and victims, but as equals. Their mission was simple: to explore, not to take, not to destroy, just to see what else was out there. Before they left, they placed a plaque on the ship. Engraved on it were the words, "We are listening. We are learning. We are not alone." Back on Earth, Ethan watched the launch from his home. He was older now, with gray in his hair and lines on his face, but his eyes still held the same light they had when he first wrote that note, the one that had started it all. He looked at the sky, where the Voidborn ships floated silently. Then he looked down at the book he was working on. Its title, The Future We Built Together. He smiled. Outside, a child played in the yard. She looked up at the sky and waved. Maybe she didn't know it yet, but she was already part of something bigger, something that had begun with fear and ended with friendship. The Voidborn never said much, but sometimes they sent messages. Sometimes they shared stories of their own, and once, long after the war had faded into memory, Zirak, the first Voidborn to ever bow to a human, sent one last message to Ethan, written in careful symbols. "You showed us what it means to think, to feel, to hope. Thank you." Ethan read it quietly. Then he wrote back, "You were always listening. We just needed to speak." And somewhere, far above the clouds, a Voidborn blinked twice. Once for yes, once for respect. And then, the silence between worlds felt warm, like the space between two friends who finally understood each other. The silence after Zirak's message was deep. Not the kind of silence that meant nothing was happening, but the kind that meant everything was. Ethan stood still, his heart beating fast. Zirak had touched him, not just with words, but with action, with respect. Outside, the alien ship floated above Kansas like it had for weeks. But now something was different. Something big was coming. Zirak stepped back and looked at Ethan. Then he tapped the glowing screen again. More symbols formed. "We have seen your thoughts, your feelings, your dreams. You are not what we believed. Ethan read the words slowly. He didn't want to miss anything. Zirak continued. We came to judge, to decide if your kind should live. Now we see. You are not weak. You are not simple. You are not alone. Ethan felt tears press against his eyes, but he blinked them away. He looked up. Then what happens now? Zirak didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and walked out of the room. Ethan followed. They moved through the smooth halls of the ship. Other Voidborn watched them pass, their glowing lines pulsing softly. They weren't hiding anymore. They were watching, waiting. They reached a large chamber filled with light. Walls shimmered like water. In the center stood a tall platform, and on it, a group of the tallest Voidborn Ethan had ever seen. Zirak joined them. Ethan was led to the edge of the room. He stood alone, surrounded by aliens who had once seemed like monsters. Then Zirak spoke, not in English, not even in spoken words, but in symbols, glowing lines of meaning that filled the air like stars. Ethan couldn't understand all of it, but he caught pieces. The humans have shown us thought. They feel deeply. They create even when broken. They are not like others we have met. A pause. Then Zirak turned and looked directly at Ethan. We will not destroy them. We will learn from them. Silence fell again. But this time it was not heavy. It was full of relief, of hope, of change. One by one, the tall Voidborn bowed, not just to Zirak, but to Ethan. And then, over the speakers, a message was sent across the world. We are the Voidborn. We came to judge. We have listened. We have learned. We will not harm. You, we will watch. We will study. We will understand. Back on Earth, people heard the message. Some cried, some cheered, some simply sat in shock. In New York, Lila held her drawing of the bird and whispered, We did it. In Texas, Carl the farmer looked at the sky and said, Maybe we're not so small after all. In Ohio, the students danced harder than before, like they were celebrating every moment. And in Kansas, inside the alien ship, Ethan stood among beings that had once terrified him, and now treated him like a teacher. Luke and the others who had doubted him stood nearby. Luke crossed his arms. You really think they're done? He asked. Ethan looked at Zarek. The alien blinked twice. Yes. Then he looked back at Luke. I do. Luke didn't say anything else. He just nodded. Later that night, Ethan sat alone, in his room. The walls glowed softly around him. Outside, the Voidborn ship remained in the sky. But now, it wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Zirak visited him one last time before leaving for orbit. He handed Ethan a small device. It pulsed with soft blue light, written on its surface. Thank you. Ethan smiled. You're welcome. Zirak placed both claws on his chest and bowed. Then he left. In the days that followed, the Voidborn withdrew. Their ships rose into space and stayed there watching silently. They didn't land again, not yet, but they didn't leave either. They were waiting, learning, listening, just like Ethan had asked. And on Earth, people began to teach. Scientists studied the Voidborn language. Schools added new lessons. Children grew up knowing that they were not alone. And Ethan? He went back to the university library where it had all started. He sat between the bookshelves, just like before. Only now, he wasn't hiding. He was writing. His first book would be called The Words That Saved Us. The Voidborn kept watching. For days, they studied what humanity had shared. Songs, poems, paintings, stories, even silly videos of people falling down or making strange faces. They scanned everything with quiet attention, as if trying to understand, not just the words or images, but the feelings behind them. Zirak spent more time with Ethan now, He asked more questions, sometimes through symbols, sometimes by pointing at things and waiting for Ethan to explain. One day, he pointed at a video of a child crying after losing a pet bird. Sadness, Ethan said. Zirek blinked once. Danger. Ethan shook his head. Not danger. Pain. We feel it when we lose something we love. Zirek tilted his head. Then he touched his chest where his glowing lines pulsed slowly. He was silent for a long time. Then he tapped the screen again and showed Ethan new symbols. You feel deeply. Even when it hurts. Why? Ethan didn't know how to answer at first. He looked at the child on the screen still crying softly. He thought about his own life, the books he loved, the friends he missed, the fear he felt every time he stepped into a new room on this alien ship. Finally, he said, because we know we won't live forever, so we try to make meaning while we can. Zirek stared at him, then he wrote, this makes you strong. Ethan smiled. Yeah, maybe it does. But not everyone saw the Voidborn as learners. Some humans still believed this was a trick. Among the captured group, tension grew. Luke and a few others started talking about escape. They didn't trust Ethan's friendship with Zirek. They thought he was being used. You think they care about our music? Luke said one night in the common room. You think they'll leave us alone because we made them laugh? Ethan sighed. They're not laughing to mock us. They're learning. They've never seen anything like us before. And what happens when they decide they don't like what they see? Another man asked. Ethan didn't have an answer. Zirek must have sensed the growing fear because soon after he brought a new message. It appeared on a glowing screen in Ethan's room. We have watched your kind. Some of you create. Some of you feel. Some of you think. But are all of you like this? Ethan read it and felt a cold weight in his chest. Zirek wasn't sure yet. He believed some humans were worth knowing, but not all. Ethan knew what he had to do. He needed proof. So, he went back to the communication device, the one Zirek had let him use before. He sent another message across the world. They're still watching. They need to see more. Show them who we really are. This time the response was even bigger. In Africa, a teacher filmed herself reading a bedtime story to her students, even though the power flickered and the camera cut out halfway. In Japan, an old woman folded paper cranes and placed them in a row, whispering a wish with each one. In Brazil, a boy played guitar on the beach, singing songs no one else knew the words to. In Canada, a soldier wrote a letter to a brother he hadn't seen in years, saying he was sorry. In India, a farmer danced, in the rain, arms wide, face smiling like the sky had given him a gift, and from everywhere people answered. They shared joy, sadness, hope, fear, everything, even silence. When the Voidborn saw it all, they stopped moving. For hours they stood still in their rooms watching the screens, absorbing the flood of human life. Zirek came to Ethan late at night. His glowing lines were dimmer than usual. He looked tired. He handed Ethan a piece of paper, written in careful symbols. We thought your kind was weak. We thought only some of you could think. But now we see. You all carry it. The spark. Ethan read it twice. His hands shook. He looked up at Zirek. Thank you, he whispered. Zirek blinked once. Then he did something unexpected. He reached out and placed both claws on Ethan's shoulders. In Voidborn culture, it meant, I see you. Ethan didn't cry, but he wanted to. Outside, the alien ship floated silently above Kansas. Inside, the universe had changed, just a little, because two very different kinds of beings had found something rare, understanding. And for the first time, the Voidborn weren't just watching, they were listening. After the ship stopped and no war came, something strange happened. The Voidborn didn't leave. They stayed above Kansas, floating like silent watchers in the sky. And they kept asking questions, through symbols, through gestures, through the glowing screens that now linked them to human minds. Ethan was their teacher. but he knew he couldn't do it alone. One day, Zirak brought him to a large room filled with light. The walls shimmered like water. In the center stood a tall device humming softly. It looked important. Zirak pointed at it. Then at Ethan. "You want me to use this?" Ethan asked. Zirak blinked twice. "Yes." Ethan stepped closer. The device responded. To his touch, words formed in both languages. Maps appeared. Signals reached out into space. Then for the first time, Ethan sent a message to every human who could still hear. It said, "They are watching. Show them we think. Share what makes you curious." He hit send, and the world began to answer. In New York, a young girl named Lila drew a picture of a bird flying between stars. She held it up to the sky and smiled. In Texas, an old farmer named Carl wrote a short poem about the wind and the soil. He read it aloud into a broken microphone, hoping someone would hear. In Ohio, a group of students filmed themselves dancing to music made from pots and pans. They laughed as they played, not caring if it was perfect. In California, a soldier sat by a campfire and told stories of his childhood. He spoke of his mother's voice, his father's jokes, and the way rain smelled after summer heat. All across the country, and even beyond it, people shared pieces of their minds. A scientist in Russia posted equations on a dusty chalkboard. Boy in Brazil painted a mural of the night sky. A woman in Canada recorded herself playing piano on a cracked keyboard, and all of it flew through the air, up to the void-borne ship. At first, nothing changed. The aliens watched silently. Their glowing lines pulsed slowly. They moved through their ship like shadows, scanning and thinking. Then, one day, Zirak called Ethan to the same room. On the screen, hundreds of images scrolled by. Videos, drawings, songs, poems, stories. Zirak turned to Ethan and clicked his mandibles fast, like before, when he had laughed at the drawing of the cat. Then he tapped the screen and pointed at the word curious. Ethan smiled. "Yes," he said. "That's us. We're always curious." Zirak blinked once, then again. "Thank you." Ethan's breath caught. He hadn't expected that. Zirak reached into a small pouch on his body and pulled out a piece of paper. He handed it to Ethan. Written in careful void-borne symbols was a message. "You have shown us more than words. You have shown us thought. You are not alone in this." Ethan read it out loud, voice trembling. Zirak looked at him and bowed again. This time, Ethan bowed back. Not everyone believed in what Ethan was doing. Some humans, still, feared the Voidborn. They thought the aliens were tricking them, waiting for the right moment to strike. Luke, the former soldier, confronted Ethan in the hallway. "You think they care about our art? Our music?" he said. "They took us from our homes. They scanned, just like lab rats." "They were trying to understand," Ethan said. "Well, what if they don't like what they see?" Ethan didn't have an answer. But deep down, he believed something else. He believed the Voidborn were afraid too. Afraid of a species that could create beauty while living in ruins. Afraid of a race that could dream even when it hurt. Afraid of humans. Later that night, Ethan sat alone in his room. He stared at the ceiling, tired but full of thoughts. Outside, the Voidborn ship floated silently. Inside, the messages kept coming. Videos, pictures, voices. And somewhere in the dark, the Voidborn watched. They didn't speak, but they listened. Just like Ethan had asked. And for the first time, the universe felt a little smaller, because two very different kinds of beings had found something they both understood. Thought. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The air inside the alien ship felt heavy. Alarms still pulsed red light across the walls. Footsteps echoed through the halls as Voidborn moved fast, their glowing lines flickering like fireflies in the dark. Outside, human ships flew closer. Ethan stood frozen with the small device in his hand. The message glowed on its surface. "Do not let them destroy us." He looked at Zirak. The tall alien's eyes were locked on him, waiting. Waiting for what? A choice. Someone had found them. Someone from Earth. And they were coming to fight. Ethan knew he had only minutes, maybe seconds, to act. He ran, down the smooth halls, past rooms filled with books and music, past humans who stared at him in confusion. Some called out asking what was happening. Others just watched, unsure if this was rescue or doom. He reached the room where the Voidborn kept their communication tools. It was quiet now, except for the soft hum of machines. He grabbed a screen, tapped it, tried to find a way to send a message. Xeric followed him. So did two other Voidborn. They didn't stop him. They trusted him. That scared him more than anything. Finally, the screen lit up. He saw words forming, his own voice translated into Voidborn symbols. But he needed something else. He needed to talk to the humans outside. Xeric touched the screen. New options appeared. One blinked brighter than the others. Ethan pointed. "Can I use that?" Xeric blinked once. "Yes." "Then help me," Ethan said. Together, they sent a signal. It went out fast, across space, toward the human ships. And then, silence. For a moment, nothing. Then a voice crackled through the speaker. "This is Captain Davis of the Skyhawk Fleet. Identify yourself." Ethan's hands shook. He took a breath. "This is Ethan Jones. I'm alive. And so are the Voidborn. Please, don't attack." There was a pause. Then the voice came back, rough and full of doubt. "You're telling me you've been living with these monsters, and you want us to stop?" "Yes," Ethan said, "because they're not monsters. They dropped out of the sky and started taking people. They were trying to understand us," Ethan said, "like we're trying to understand them." More silence. Then another voice joined the call. Younger, female. If they wanted to understand, why not talk first? Ethan looked at Xerac. The alien stepped forward and touched the screen. Symbols changed. Then a new message appeared. "Our kind does not speak. We observe. We learn. We decide." Ethan read it aloud. "They don't speak like we do. They watch first. Then they decide if a species is worth knowing." "And what did they decide about us?" the woman asked. Xerac answered by tapping the screen again. More symbols formed. Ethan read them slowly. "You create. You feel. You think beyond survival. You are curious. You are worth knowing." The line stayed silent. Then finally the captain spoke. "We have reports of cities destroyed. People taken. How do you explain that?" Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't have an easy answer. "They didn't know," he said. "They thought we were like animals. Until now." Xeric raised his claw and pointed at the screen. More words formed. "We made a mistake. We are learning." Ethan read them out loud. The silence that followed felt longer than before. Then the captain sighed. "Stand by." The signal cut off. Inside the ship, everything was still. The Voidborn stood quietly. The humans who had followed Ethan looked at him like he had gone mad. "You really think they'll listen?" one of them asked. "I hope so," Ethan said. Minutes passed. Then the voice came back. "This is Captain Davis. We're standing down. For now. But if this goes wrong, it's on you." "Thank you," Ethan whispered. Outside, the human ships slowed, weapons powered down. No shots fired, no war, just silence, and the chance for something else. Conversation. Xeric turned to Ethan. His glowing lines pulsed gently. Then he did something no Voidborn had done before. He placed both claws on his chest and bowed. In human language, it meant respect. In Voidborn, it meant even more. "You have opened our eyes." Ethan smiled. Outside, the sun began to rise over Kansas. Inside, a new kind of peace had begun. Not because of weapons, not because of power, but because of a few simple words, words that proved humans were fine and so were the Voidborn. Ethan's world had changed. What once felt like a prison now felt like a classroom. Every day he met with Zirak or one of the other Voidborn. They brought new tools, small slates that glowed when touched, strange pens that wrote without ink, even books made of light and sound. They were learning from him, and he was learning from them. He started to understand their symbols, not all of them, but enough to build small sentences. He learned that Zirak meant something like observer or teacher. He also learned that the Voidborn did not see time the same way humans did. To them, events were not past or future. They were simply known or unknown. It was confusing at first, but slowly things began to make sense. One morning, Zirak brought a new device. It looked like a mirror made of smoke. When Ethan touched it, words appeared, not in English, but in Voidborn script. Then after a moment, they changed into his own language. Zirak pointed at the screen and clicked his mandibles softly. "You teach us?" Ethan asked. Zirak blinked twice. So Ethan tried. He started with simple ideas. Sky, water, fire. Then he moved to more complex ones. Hope, fear, memory. Each word came with a picture, a sound, sometimes even a feeling. The Voidborn responded by showing him how they saw the world. To them, memory was not just something stored. It was something alive, something shared across time and space. Ethan was amazed, but not everyone saw this as progress. Among the captured humans, there was fear. Some believed Ethan was being tricked. Others thought he had gone too far, that he was forgetting what the Voidborn had done to the world below. A man named Luke, a former soldier, spoke out one night in the common room. "We're not guests," he said. "We're prisoners. And you're treating them like friends." Ethan shook his head. "They could have killed us. They didn't. They're trying to understand us." "And what if they decide we're not worth understanding?" Luke shot back. No one had an answer for that. Still, Ethan kept working. He showed the Voidborn music. He played songs from his phone, old folk tunes, jazz, even rock. They didn't dance, but they listened. One of them tapped its claws in rhythm. Another closed its eyes and stayed still for a long time. He gave them books, poetry, stories. He read aloud, and they watched his mouth move, studied the rise and fall of his voice. Once he read a poem about stars and silence. When he finished, Zirak reached out and touched his arm gently. For the first time, Ethan understood. The Voidborn weren't just studying humans. They were moved by them. But then, everything changed. Late one evening, alarms sounded through the ship. Lights flashed red. The Voidborn moved quickly, their usual calm replaced by urgency. Ethan ran to the window-like panel in his room. Outside, he saw ships, human ships, flying toward them. Someone had found them, and they were ready to fight. The humans in the room panicked. "Finally!" Luke shouted. "Someone's coming to save us!" Others cheered. Some cried. Ethan stood frozen. He looked at Zirak, who had entered the room silently. The alien's glowing lines pulsed fast like a heartbeat. Zirak looked at Ethan. Then he raised a claw and pointed at the approaching ships. Then he looked back at Ethan and blinked once, not twice, just once. In Voidborn language, that meant danger. Ethan's breath caught. Before he could speak, Zirak handed him a small device. It was warm in his hand. On its surface, a message formed in slow, careful letters. "Do not let them destroy us." Ethan stared at the words. Outside, the human ships grew closer. Inside, the silence between a man and an alien was louder than any war. Ethan sat alone in a small room aboard the alien ship. The walls were smooth and gray, glowing softly like moonlight. There was no window, no clock, no way to tell time. Just silence and light. He held the note in his hand. The same one he had shown the tall alien, Zirak, he would later learn its name. The words still felt strange. "You're watching us. We are listening." He didn't know why he had written them. Maybe because he wanted to say something. Anything. Maybe because he was tired of being silent while the world ended outside. A soft click sounded. Then the wall in front of him shimmered and vanished. Two of the aliens stepped inside. They were tall, with thin limbs and hard shells that gleamed under the lights. Their eyes were black and deep, like holes in the sky. One of them held out a small object. It looked like a tablet made of glass and metal. It had no buttons or screen, but when Ethan reached for it, it lit up in his hand. He looked at the alien. "What do you want from me?" he asked. The alien did not answer. Instead, it pointed at the device, and then at Ethan's mouth. "You want me to talk?" he said slowly. Again, no answer. Only the quiet hum of the room and the watchful eyes of the beings before him. Ethan took a breath and began to speak. He told them about the world below, about farms and cities, about music and books. He talked about families and friends, about birthdays and funerals. He spoke until his voice cracked and his throat hurt. When he finished, the aliens looked at each other. Then they left. This became the pattern. Every day, or what felt like a day, the aliens came. Sometimes more than once. Sometimes they brought food, though it looked nothing like what humans ate. Sometimes they brought tools or pictures or strange objects that glowed. They never spoke, but they watched, listened, learned. Ethan realized they weren't trying to hurt anyone. They were trying to understand. He started drawing things. Simple sketches on pieces of paper the aliens gave him. He drew people, animals, houses. He even drew a cat once just to see if they would react. They did. One of them tilted its head and clicked its mandibles fast, like laughter. He smiled. As the days passed, Ethan noticed changes. The aliens no longer stood far away. Some sat near him now, watching as he wrote or drew. One even tried to copy his handwriting. It was messy, but the effort was clear. Still, communication was slow, broken, frustrating. Then, one day, Zirak returned. He walked into the room like he owned it, taller than the others, his glowing lines brighter. His eyes locked onto Ethan's. Zirak held up a piece of paper. It was Ethan's note. The same one, but now beside it, there were new markings, sharp, jagged symbols that pulsed faintly. Zirak tapped the new symbols and then pointed at Ethan. "You read this?" Ethan asked. Zirak blinked twice. Hope flickered in Ethan's chest. He grabbed a pen and wrote beneath the alien symbols. He didn't know what they meant, but he guessed. "Do these mean we are learning?" Zirak stared. Then, he nodded, just once. Ethan's heart raced. This wasn't just observation anymore. This was conversation. He spent hours after that trying to match the symbols to sounds. He recorded everything. He found patterns, meanings. Slowly, a bridge formed between them. But not everyone was happy. Some of the humans were scared. They didn't trust the aliens. They thought Ethan was wasting time playing games while the world burned. "You think they care about words?" one man whispered to him. "They dropped out of the sky and started taking people." "They haven't hurt us," Ethan replied. "Not yet." Ethan couldn't argue with fear. He only knew what he saw, and what he saw was intelligence, curiosity, something deeper than war. One night, alone in his room, he wrote again, this time for himself. "We don't need to be enemies. We just need to understand each other." He folded the paper and placed it under his pillow. Outside, the alien ship floated silently above Kansas. Inside, a human and an alien had begun to speak, and for the first time, neither was afraid. Okay, here is Cow Part 1 of your HF story, written in third person using simple and basic English. It's around 800 words and focuses on setting the scene, introducing the main character, and showing the first encounter with the alien species. The sky changed one morning. It wasn't a storm or fire. It was something no one had ever seen before. A huge black shape came down from space and hovered over the land. People tried to call it many things: UFO, mothership, destroyer, but nothing fit right. It didn't land. It just hung there, above a small town in Kansas. Not New York, not Washington, not even a big city. Just a quiet place where farmers grew crops and kids played baseball in the summer. People were scared. Some ran. Others looked, up in silence, trying to understand what they were seeing. The TV news said it was happening all over the world. But somehow, this little town had become part of something much bigger. Inside a small university library, Ethan Jones sat on the floor between two bookshelves. He was in his mid-20s, tall, with messy brown hair and tired eyes. He wore an old hoodie and jeans, and he held a flashlight that was almost out of batteries. He hadn't left the building in 3 days. When the townspeople evacuated, he stayed behind. He didn't have a car. He didn't know where to go, and deep down, he thought maybe if he waited long enough, someone would come to talk instead of shoot. But so far, no one had talked. The aliens arrived just after sunset. They didn't make noise like fighter jets or explosions. They moved silently, their dark ships landing without sound. Then came the figures, tall, insect-like beings with glowing lines running across their bodies. Their eyes were large and black, reflecting light like glass. They didn't speak, at least not in any way humans could understand. They took people. Not all, just some. It seemed random, but maybe it wasn't. Ethan was among them. They didn't hurt him. They didn't need to. They simply surrounded him, raised strange devices, and scanned him from head to toe. Then one of them clicked its mandibles together, a fast, sharp sound, and gestured for him to move. He walked with them, through the empty streets, past broken cars and silent homes. Birds didn't fly, dogs didn't bark. Everything was still, as if the world was holding its breath. They reached a ship unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was smooth and black, with no visible doors or windows. The ground beneath him shimmered, and suddenly he was inside. The room was cold and bright. Walls pulsed with soft blue light. The air smelled clean, sterile, like hospitals do. Other humans were already there, some young, some old. None spoke, all watched. Ethan looked around. He saw fear in their faces, but he also saw something else. Hope. They were alive. That meant something. Hours passed. Maybe more. Time felt wrong here. Then one of the aliens stepped forward. It was taller than the rest, with glowing patterns across its arms and chest. Ethan guessed it was in charge. It stared at him. Then it did something unexpected. It pointed at him. A smaller alien brought something. A flat device made of metal and glass. The leader handed it to Ethan. He looked at it. It was blank. He looked back at the alien. "What?" he whispered. No response. So he did the only thing he could think of. He wrote. He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. It was torn, covered in scribbles and doodles from earlier that week. He flipped it over and used the last empty corner. With shaky fingers he wrote, "You are watching us. We are listening." He held it up. The alien froze, its head tilted slightly. The glowing lines on its body flickered. Then slowly, it blinked. Not once, but twice. The smaller alien shifted. Their mandibles clicked faster. Ethan's heart pounded. Was that a mistake? Was he going to be punished for writing a stupid note? But nothing happened. After a few moments, the tall alien turned and walked away. The others followed. The lights dimmed. The humans remained. And Ethan kept the note in his hand, wondering if he had just done something very brave or very foolish. Outside, the black ship floated in silence. Inside, a new kind of conversation had begun. One made not with weapons or voices, but with words.